So the topic of the message today is where do we stand? And it's based on a mother's words, but I want to begin by talking about reading this scripture about Jesus and this centurion, a soldier that he met during his life. It said, when Jesus had entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him asking for help. Lord, he said, my servant lies at home paralyzed, suffering terribly. Jesus said to him, shall I come and heal him? The centurion replied, Lord, I do not deserve to have you come under my roof, but just say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I myself am a man under authority, with soldiers under me. I tell this one, go, and he goes. That one, come, and he comes. I say to my servant, do this, and he does it. When Jesus heard this, he was amazed and said to those following him, truly I tell you, I have not found anyone in Israel with such great faith. I say to you that many will come from the east and the west and will take their places at the feast with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the subjects of the kingdom will be thrown outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then Jesus said to the centurion, go, let it be done just as you believed it would. And his servant was healed at that moment. It's a picture of Jesus talking. What was it about the centurion? What was it that Jesus realized and understood? What was it that he understood about Jesus? He's probably, according to Scripture, he's probably the only one in Jesus' life that Jesus met that really understood who Jesus was. When Jesus healed people, was it Jesus healing people? Was it the power and the authority of Jesus himself personally healing people? Giving life to people? Doing miracles? Accomplishing incredible things? No. Remember the story where a blind man comes up to Jesus and Jesus tells him, well, go down to the water and rub mud on your eyes, and then you'll be able to see. And the blind man goes down to the water and he puts mud on his eyes, and then suddenly he can see. Was he able to see because he put mud on his eyes? Did Jesus have some special power that healed him? Who healed these people? Whose power and authority was it? It was God. It was God. And this centurion understood that Jesus had the authority and the authority of God because he was the Son of God. Jesus was special and was important and priceless because he was the one and only first Son of God that had not ever fallen. And this centurion, he said, it's okay, you don't have to come to where my servant is. You just say the word, and God will heal him because you have that authority. You're the Son of God. That's why Jesus said he hasn't seen any such faith. That's the position that Jesus had, that no one else really understood. Even his own disciples didn't understand. And sadly, after the resurrection of Jesus, which we celebrate today on Easter, many Christian people became even confused about who Jesus is. They say Jesus is God. Jesus is the Creator God. Jesus existed before he was born on the earth. He existed already, and he's the Creator. And God and Jesus are the same. But that's not the principal point of view at all. So this is True Mother's speech. She said, during this past celebration, this is the first thing she said in Famicon. During this past celebration of Foundation Day, I asked this question: At this current moment, where do you stand? Do you remember this question? Where do you currently stand? So I want to talk about, where do we really stand today? Where are we? And we can't understand where we really stand unless we really understand the principle. You know, a few weeks ago, the Reverend Billy Graham passed away. One of the most incredible Christian leaders in not just America, but in the world, recognized by everyone. So I was curious, I was thinking about him, and I went into a thrift shop, and I was looking at the books, and I came across 2 books. One of them is this book, Just As I Am, by Billy Graham, or written about his autobiography. It was written about 1998, it's about his life. And I saw this book, Happier Than God. Happier Than God. And I thought, I don't know. But I know about Billy Graham's life and many things, so I looked through the book and I read it, and I learned about his wife and how, Billy Graham's wife, Ruth Graham, as a teenager, she grew up in North Korea. Her parents were missionaries in China, and they sent her to Korea to go to school when she was 13 years old. And she lived and went to school within a few miles of where True Father was born and grew up. She learned Korean. She learned the Korean culture, and she struggled with her faith in Korea. What is now North Korea? She would later become the wife of the Reverend Billy Graham. Incredible how God was preparing Billy Graham and his wife to be the John the Baptist of all John the Baptists. Anyway, I read this book. I thought, well, this is an interesting book. And in the beginning, it was inspiring and hopeful, but it eventually kind of degenerated into one of those books that, God isn't really a personal God. God is just an energy. And if you really, if you're in the right frame of mind, or if you put yourself in the right position, you can tap into that energy. In any case, it leaves a lot to be desired. But then also, when we think about Billy Graham, I know that people are curious. Well, aren't you curious? Wouldn't you be curious as to the moment Billy Graham went into the spiritual world, what happened to him? Who did he meet first? What kind of experience is he going to have in the spiritual world? The moment he realizes that there is eternal life in the spiritual world? Is Jesus going to be right there to greet him? Is he going to be greeted by other Christian people? Is he going to be judged? Come on, our members have to be thinking, Billy Graham never, ever really received father or mother. And he had many opportunities. There's one older brother in our church who many, many, many years ago wrote a very sincere and serious and deep letter to Ruth Graham about True Father. And also I know from being in North Carolina in the early 70s that there were certain people who were trying to reach Billy Graham and communicate with him about Father. But even I read some of his later writings right before Billy Graham passed away, and he was still preaching about eternal hell and the judgment that was coming. So I'm very curious. Then a few weeks later, this man, Stephen Hawkins, probably one of the most famous scientists in our age, who wrote a book called The Grand Design. I read that entire book. I was enthralled by it. But his almost his single purpose in life, it seems, if you read his writings, he was trying so desperately to offer an alternative point of view that God exists. He was trying to show through science that we don't need God, that science alone will be able to give us the answers that we need. So then the moment a person like him passes away, you kind of wonder, what happens? What does he experience? Who's there to greet him? Who's there to meet him? And then a few days ago, the Pope was having a meeting with a friend of his who happens to be an atheist and a journalist. And the Pope made some comments to this person. And the Pope said that hell doesn't exist. And the person said, well, what happens when evil people die? He says, well, if good people die, they get rewarded because of what they did. They get to be with God. But if evil people die, they just disappear. They just disintegrate. And the Catholic Church, suddenly, this guy that the Pope was talking to, he wrote in this newspaper about what the Pope had said. And the Catholic Church is now pedaling over, going backwards, trying to figure out, well, how can we explain this? How can the popes make a statement that is totally contradictory to 2,000 years of Catholic teaching? Here's the answer. What happens after you die? Lots of things happen after you die. They just don't involve you. Louis C.K., he's a very famous comedian. But then there's a darker side, a more serious side. This was a phrase carved into a concentration camp wall by a Jewish prisoner who said, if there is a God, he will have to beg my forgiveness. So we have the answer. People are confused. True Mother is asking, where do we stand? Where do you stand? Where does the world stand? They're in the midst of a lot of, people are sincere and serious questioning. So you'll notice before every speech that Father ever gave, especially his public speeches, and True Mother did the same thing in Famicon, they always begin by talking about the principle of creation and the fall of man. Why? Because True Mother and True Father, they have to create a framework for explaining what they're going to explain. And so even before I speak, I want to create this framework, but I'm going to go right to the divine principle. This is from the Divine Principle book. This isn't from one of Father's speeches. This is from the Divine Principle book, and it says, the deepest explanation of God's purpose of creation is revealed in terms of relationships of heart. As our invisible internal parent, God created human beings as his substantial children. Adam and Eve were created in the image of God as the substantial object partners to God in the pattern of his dual characteristics. As God's first substantial object partners, they were meant to be the parents of humankind. That paragraph is the principle of creation right there. They were meant to become husband and wife, bear and raise children, and form a family, intertwining the heart of parents, the heart of husband and wife, the heart of brothers and sisters, and the heart of children. Their family would have manifested the true love of parents, the true love of husband and wife, the true love of children. This would have been the four-position foundation which realizes the three-object purpose. In this manner, God intended to build the kingdom of heaven on earth through his own children, born of his heavenly lineage. When we talk about the principle, the most important thing we have to constantly remind ourselves and go back to is everything is about our relationships. The relationship that the archangel would have with Eve and Adam and with God. The relationship that Eve would have with God, her parent, Adam, who would become her husband, and the archangel, who was to support and serve. The relationship that Adam would have with God and with Eve and with the archangel. And then after their children are born, what relationship would they have with the angelic world, with the physical world, with their parents, with their brothers and sisters? And what relationship would they continue to have with God as the eternal parent? Relationships. The relationship. The fall is when the relationship between the archangel and Eve and Adam and God was broken, was destroyed, was poisoned. The primary significance of the fall was that the first human ancestors formed a bond of blood ties with the archangel. Therefore, all of humanity has been bound to Satan's lineage. Every human being has been born as a child of the devil. The first human ancestors fell to the position where they no longer had any connection to God's lineage. Accordingly, the ultimate purpose of God's providence of restoration is to transform fallen people who have no connection to God's lineage into children born of God's direct lineage. Let us look further at the Bible for evidence of this hidden purpose behind God's providence. Then we start talking about all the stories in the Bible, and where every one of them shows how God is working to try to restore the relationship between first Cain and Abel, and then between parents and the children. Then, finally, Christ will return and restore all humanity to be God's true children. He will return in the flesh and be born on the earth, as at his first coming. He will restore through indemnity the course of his first coming by walking it again. As was explained above, the returning Christ will conduct the dispensation to start based on the Word, and then complete the foundation for the Messiah, both spiritually and physically. Upon that foundation, he will engraft all humanity with himself, cleansing them of the original sin and restoring them to be God's children, born of his lineage. At the first coming, Jesus laid a family foundation by choosing 12 disciples and appointing 3 of the 12 as his chief disciples. In this, he intended to restore through indemnity the position of Jacob, who had been the central figure for the family foundation for the Messiah. By raising up 70 followers, Jesus then expanded the scope of his foundation to the clan level. In the same manner, Christ at the second advent will begin by laying both spiritually and physically the family foundation for the Messiah. He will then expand its scope to the clan, society, nation, world, and cosmos. When this foundation is secured, he will finally be able to build the kingdom of heaven. We all know these diagrams from the divine principle teaching. Where are we today? Remember I talked about Jesus. Why was Jesus so valuable and precious? Because Jesus was the only person, since the fall took place, Jesus was the only person born that had a direct connection to the lineage of God, who could directly connect to the heart of God as his parent. Jesus understood God is my Father, and I am his Son. And Jesus knew that his mission was to proclaim the relationship of parent and child to the world. And ultimately, his mission would be to not just explain that he is the Son of God, but he had to create a way that all mankind would be able to engraft back to the lineage of God. The only way that would take place is if Jesus himself would find a spouse, a bride. Jesus was the second Adam. There has to be a second Eve. And then together they have to become parents. They have to restore what Adam and Eve failed to do. It's so very simple in one sense. Simple in its theory, but totally incredibly difficult in practice. Because 2,000 years ago, Jesus was 30 years old and he began speaking publicly, and then he died. He was killed. He never had an opportunity to multiply the relationship that he had with God. And so, before Jesus was able to restore this, he died. And true parents came, and the history of Christianity, 2,000 years. Again, if we study it, it's incredible what the last 2,000 years of history are. And when we study the parallels of history, amazing. But the bottom line is this. In 1945, at the very end of World War II, all of mankind was prepared and ready. God had prepared everything. He had prepared nations. He had prepared the Christianity. He prepared the world. He prepared another Rome in America. He prepared another Israel in Korea. And the attention of the world at the end of World War II suddenly went to Korea. If we really study the history at the end of World War II, it's incredible how suddenly military forces from America, military forces from China, from North Korea, from Russia, they all went to Korea. Because Korea now had to be rebuilt because it had been occupied by the Japanese forces for 40 years. And the stage was set. And True Father was there, and Christians were ready. And Christianity had been prepared, and there were special Christian groups that had received revelation. It was all there. And what happened to True Father? He married. He got married. His parents directed him, and he got married. He had a wife, and he had children. At this time, already. No pomp and circumstances about, the blessing. Just there's True Father with his wife and his children, and they're ready, waiting to be recognized and understood and received. And then we know the history. Failure. Again. Failure. Just like at the time of Jesus. The John the Baptists and all of the Christian groups at that time. And everyone didn't, this series of unfortunate events took place. And so, what happened? What was lost? Everything. Everything was lost. Satan had done it again. He had made a condition to confuse Christians, to confuse people enough that they were losing their foundation. Korea was about to become a communist nation. Father said no. All by himself, he said, I'll do whatever it takes. I'll do whatever it takes. I won't let this foundation be destroyed this time. And Father understood the principle so well. So he decided to go at the indemnity course. Jesus Christ, 3 years of a public ministry. And then he was killed. He died on the cross, a 3-hour death on the cross. True Father, at this time, went to North Korea. And at one point, he was taken into the police station. And he was brutally tortured for 3 days. Not for 3 hours, for 3 days. And they thought he was dead. And he was thrown out into the snow. Just like Jesus Christ. He was crucified and martyred and killed. But, unlike Jesus Christ, he did not die physically. He clung to life physically, and he came back. He came back physically and spiritually. He came back to life. And the members nurtured him and raised him up. And then he went out and spoke again. And then he was arrested again. And he was put in Hungnon prison. Jesus Christ spent 3 years of a public ministry going out and teaching the word and testifying about God's will. True Father spent almost 3 years in a prison, being starved to death, being exposed to the elements, being completely surrounded by Satan and darkness and evil and doubt and fear and confusion and chaos. And in 2 years and 8 months, he survived, and he created a condition even in the prison where people loved him and respected him and admired him and followed him. Then he came out of Hungnon prison. Then he went south. Then, God began to work around Father, and Father created HSA, UWC, for the purpose of essentially replacing Christianity, providentially. And people started to join. And then Father's own wife and children came back to him. But she could not keep her faith and her trust in Father. So Father not only lost the entire foundation of Christianity, he also lost his connection to his wife and his children. And Father had to do everything from the beginning again. So where did this beginning begin again? 1960. In 1960 is when the conditions, the indemnity, the sacrifice, for 14 years, Father had made such incredible conditions. And then God sent a second Eve. And this second Eve was True Mother. And where did she come from? It's so fascinating. She came from these interesting, unique Christian groups. Her mother was a member of one of those Christian organizations and groups that had received revelation about the Messiah coming again. But she was a little girl. She was a baby, and then she was raised and taken care of by her mother. And then at just 17 years old, she was blessed in 1960 to true parents. So, from 1960, True Father and True Mother went through what we would call the completed Testament age. The time when Adam and Eve were supposed to be blessed by God, and then they were supposed to create the family of God. True Father and True Mother did it under the most difficult of circumstances. So, at the end of this period, 1968, January 1st, Father proclaimed God's Day. He said, I've made during this period of 7 years, the condition was made for the restoration of all things, Day of all things, Day of Children's Day, Parents' Day, and finally he proclaimed God's Day. That's, boom, 1968 is when the eternal true parents were established on the earthly plane. So if you look at this period from 1960 to 1968, that was who probably struggled and suffered the most during that period? I believe it would be Mother. This was her time to perfect her relationship with Father, and to have children, and to love members, and to inherit everything that Father had accomplished, the restoration, the recreation. And she was just a young lady going through this. And we know the stories. She was doubted. Her first baby was a girl. And people would criticize her for that. People talked about how she had failed. Oh, she's too young. She's not smart enough. Blah, 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 blah. Everything. How difficult. How impossible could that have been for this one young lady to trust and have faith that this man is the Christ, and that I am meant to be the daughter of the Christ, the daughter of God, and the wife, and become the true mother. 7 years, incredible difficulty, together, father and mother. So then, at the end of that 7 years, is when God put the seal of absolute approval. This is my son, and this is my daughter. And these are the true parents of mankind, and nothing in history is ever going to change that. But where's the rest of the world? Where are we? Where were we in 1968? You know, Josh, where were you in 1968? You know, some of us can remember. Oh, well, I was what? 8. I was a teenager. We were all teenagers. We hadn't even met the church. Father hadn't even come. He had come to America in 1965, went through all of America and prayed, did holy grounds. But then he didn't come again until 1970, 71. But there were some members here. But it's incredible. But this relationship now was true parents were established. But remember, the Messiah has to come. And he has to create the family. He has to create a nation. He has to create a world. And he has to restore the cosmos. So even though true father and true mother had made the conditions personally, Father has to bring all of us up here through this. And so all the blessings, there was so much pomp and circumstance around true father and true mother's blessing. And then they blessed the 36 couple, the 72 couple, the 120, the 443, 430, 777, 1800, 2000, on, boom, boom, boom. Why? Because all these couples now are representing moving from the family to the nation, to the world, to the cosmos. So in 1975, in Korea, Father made the condition, centered on blessed families and centered on the Yoido Rally proclamation and standing up against God and bringing over 1 million Koreans and Christians there, you know, couldn't compete with Father. And the government of Korea supported Father, protected him. This was a real nation actually supporting true parents at that time. And then Father came back the next year, 1976, Washington Monument, first Yankee Stadium, and then Washington Monument, proclaiming, you know, that communism was the enemy of the world and standing up as if Jesus standing in the center of Rome, speaking out. And we brought thousands of people from all over America in the buses. And Father proclaimed, he said, the Washington Monument Rally victory was the greatest victory in the history of God's providence. We forget these things. Here we are so many years later, and we're nitpicking about, you know, who said what to who and who's doing what, and we're not remembering or realizing or understanding the foundation that exists, that true parents stand on. Then, what happened in 1993 finally? I mean, first of all, we went through the 80s, and communism. In 1989, the Berlin Wall came down. In 1990, you know, Father went to Russia and met with Gorbachev. In 1991, he went back to North Korea. Embraced Kim Il-sung. The very man, one of the very people who had tried to kill Father in Hungnam prison. When Father was in Hungnam prison, paying so much indemnity for the world and loving God and loving mankind, Kim Il-sung was becoming a super communist. And then here's he and Father embracing, and Father loving him like his brother, feeling toward him like a brother. Incredible. Then, 2 years later, what did true parents proclaim? They proclaimed the completed Testament age. 1993. The first time Father stood in a public place and he said, I am the Messiah. I am the true parents of mankind. I am the Savior. I am the second coming. I remember when this, and it might have even been Mother who said it first. on Father's behalf. But it was at one of these speeches, either in 1992 or 93. Why? Father actually never really said publicly that he was the Messiah, that he was the true parents until then. Because now, by 1993, the completed testament age had reached the world level. Then, all through the 1990s, up until 98, 99, 2000, you read Father's speeches. Father's talking about blessing the spiritual world. He's talking about blessing Hitler, blessing Stalin. He's talking about forgiving even the Korean Christians. You know, in one sentence, Father talked about, you know, what do you think? Is it okay? Is it good to forgive Hitler and Stalin and the Korean Christians? Can you imagine putting Korean Christians in the same category as Hitler and Stalin? But from the viewpoint of the providence, Father understood. The Father's heart was broken by people that didn't understand God's providence. Anyway, the completed testament age, right up until what year? 2000. Then, Father began to speak after 2000, and in 2005 he gave this part of this speech. Respected guests from home and abroad, ladies and gentlemen, this is a time of great transition in history. At this moment, the bright sun of the 5th year of God's kingdom of Cheonilguk is causing flowers of life and love to bloom for all humankind and all things in the universe. God's grace and blessing are upon us. Ladies and gentlemen, my entire life of 80-some years has been consistently devoted to upholding God's will for the salvation of humankind. After holding over 10,000 meetings and public speeches to teach the words of truth, today my lifelong ministry is reaching its fulfillment. Generally, we think of history in terms of people and events as they happen. However, there is another way to understand history, from the vertical perspective of God's providence. Today you have all participated in the Peace King crowning ceremony of cosmic unity. This was an event unprecedented in history. History will record this day in eternity. Today, we are receiving God's abundant grace. We are beginning the second 4-year course in the province of Cheonilguk, which runs from 2005 to 2008. In commemorating this significant day, I would like to inform you about the heavenly laws that we must know and practice in this age. The theme of my speech is perfect restoration of Cain and Abel, brotherhood, and the ideal world of creation. So, Father began talking about Cheonilguk, established Cheonilguk in the year 2000. Now, in 2005, this is the beginning of the 5th year, and there'll be several more years in the establishment of Cheonilguk up until 2008. So, if we look back, again, in 2000, Father established the first of Cheonilguk, but, again, he wants to make conditions that the nation and the world and the cosmos also have to be involved in the creation of Cheonilguk. So if you look at everything True Parents did from 2000 until 2008, that's when all the speaking tours, I had pictures of the books, but I took them out. You know, True Mother's 120 Nation Speaking Tour. You know, there was so many speaking tours because Father was bringing the rest of the world with him up until 2008. So from the time they were blessed, through the 70s, all the way up, the Holy Wedding, True Father and True Mother in 2004, blessed again, and all the way up until 2008. Then what happened in 2008? Do you remember? Actually, there was a 10-year anniversary that none of us actually paid much attention to on March 19th. Actually it was March 17th, St. Patrick's Day in Korea. March 17, 2008. What happened? Do you remember? Hyojin. Hyojin went to the spiritual world. Who's Hyojin? Father's first son. True father and true mother's eldest son went to the spiritual world. And then 120 days later, what happened? Almost exactly 120 days later, true father and true mother and true children were in a helicopter. And that helicopter crashed. It crashed and it burned. And miraculously, they all got out and survived. And it was a miracle. People don't survive helicopter crashes. It's almost as if God was saying, look what can happen any moment. Any moment now, true father, true mother, grandchildren, the true family, boom, can be taken off the face of the earth. It's kind of like, I felt, God is saying to us, do you understand the age you're living in? Do you realize the significance of these events in history that have taken place? But in another sense, God was saying, true parents are finished. True parents have done everything they could possibly do to save fallen mankind. Now, it's in your hands. Now it's up to the blessed families. We, the blessed families, have to follow the tradition that true parents have established. So 4 years later, Father would go to the spiritual world in 2012 and left Mother behind. And you kind of wonder, I thought about this a lot and I've really prayed about it. And God kind of gave me an answer. I don't know if it's absolutely correct, but I'm going to say it. Mother joined this movement when she was 16 or 17 years old. She never had a chance to be really, in a sense, by herself, on her own. She never had an opportunity to be fully responsible by herself for us, members, or for the Providence. From the moment she was matched and blessed to Father, she became the perfect object of Father. And Father himself was the one that created this movement. Mother wasn't around when Father was in prison. She was going a certain course. But when Father went to the spiritual world, God is giving Mother the opportunity, the precious opportunity. Now, without Father being there, Mother is able to be responsible, to be in charge, to have that experience of being the one that everyone is going to look toward for guidance and direction. Now, I'm not saying it's a simple or easy thing. It could be incredibly difficult, but this is Mother's golden opportunity. This is an opportunity that God is showing. Just as much as I trusted Father, and just as great as Father was to create the unification movement and to bring all of this to you with True Mother herself, before she leaves this earthly plane, before she goes into the spiritual world, she has the opportunity to be in charge, to be responsible. So now, in conclusion, I want to really study and look at True Mother's speech, understanding this framework of where we are today, of how much true parents have accomplished. Let's look at some of True Mother's words. She says, in the Gospel of Matthew, it is written, people can be forgiven for slandering the Messiah. However, whoever blasphemes against the Holy Spirit cannot be forgiven. Do you remember this passage? I remember it. I used to think about that, man. I mean, what does it mean to slander the Holy Spirit? This means that with regard to the history of the providence of restoration through indemnity, we are in the last days. Whoever blasphemes against the only begotten daughter, true mother, shall find no salvation. You must understand this. We are in the last days. Do you understand? I think, when you think about the restoration of Cain and Abel, and the brothers fighting with each other and struggling with each other, in one sense, there's always room for an excuse. You know, Cain has some reason to be able to be angry at Abel, because Abel is arrogant or whatever. Abel has a reason, obviously, to be afraid of Cain, because Cain's trying to kill him. So, you know, fighting and squabbling among brothers and family in like that, in the restoration, it's understandable. We can say it's forgivable. But, and even, you know, let's look at the way relationship between, you know, fathers and their children. You know, fathers are, you know, subjective people, pretty strong-natured, you know. If their son or their daughter yells at them or you know, tries to fight with them, man, they grab them by the lapels and, you know, who do you think you are, kid? I'm your father, you better do what I say, right? But the mother's position is very different. Especially a true, completely restored mother who is simply, sincerely from the bottom of her heart wanting to love her children. Then, if her children rise up, or if someone rises up and attacks the mother, that's, in a way, unforgivable. You have no excuse to treat your mother that way. So, in this sense, I don't believe True Mother is saying that, you know, my children or anyone that come against me are, you know, they're never going to enter the kingdom of heaven. She's trying to explain providentially the significance of her role as mother at this time. You know, even on the streets, you know, when people fight with each other, you'll see it in movies and stuff. People say, you can do anything you want, but don't say anything bad about your mother, right? Don't mess with the kid's mother. Even enemies will come together and say, oh man, what are you doing? Don't talk about his mother that way. You can't talk about mom that way. You're from Chicago. You know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. This is what this means. Therefore, please awaken people from their ignorance. You must teach them. Regarding the members of the true family, there have been some issues. They do not understand heaven's providence. One of them claims to be the eldest son. I do not know whether the concept of eldest son is as strong in Western culture, but in Eastern culture in particular, in Confucianism, the concept of elder son is strong. The eldest son carries the family name. When the eldest son ascends to the spirit world, the second or third son does not become the eldest. The line continues with the son of the eldest son. It is that son's responsibility. No matter how old the uncles may be, the ancestors should be attended by attending the eldest son's son as the center. This is the tradition of Eastern or Confucian culture. But, however, regarding heaven's providence, what is clear is that true parents are true parents of heaven, earth, and humankind. There is no previous or future true parents of heaven, earth, and humankind. This means there can be no concept of inheritor or successor. Do you understand? Nobody inherits the position or the role of Sun Myung Moon or Hak Ja Moon. They are the true parents of mankind. Whether they're alive on this earth or they're in the spiritual world, from now until the ends of eternity, they are the two people who established the foundation to restore fallen mankind and recreate the failure of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, and they have fulfilled the role of the true father and the true mother, and that is that. Therefore, all we can do is inherit and learn and support and become and follow like them. With regards to carrying on the tradition of true parents of heaven, earth, and humankind, the person standing in the position of eldest son can become a central figure in carrying on the tradition. In simple terms, this son stands in a position akin to the high priest. There are high priests in each nation. Those among you who are responsible for a nation are the high priests of that nation. However, regarding the providence as a whole, when it comes to establishing the tradition centering on true parents, the eldest son's line will carry this mission through the generations. Do you understand what I mean? In regard to the providence as a whole, what is the providence as a whole? The providence as a whole is that God intended for the original man and the original woman to have children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. And in the providence as a whole, the first son of those parents is always and forevermore going to be the eldest son, the first son. The first one that they learned and loved and gave life to and supported and encouraged. And then as their children were born, this eldest son or eldest daughter were in the family, and then the children come under them, and they have an elder relationship and a younger relationship. Nothing changes that. So, who is the eldest son of true parents? Hyojin. And he's always going to be the eldest son of true parents. Even though in his lifetime there were a lot of issues that he struggled with and went through. And there's a lot of, we could say, even confusion and chaos concerning his family. I can be very honest with you. I had a very difficult time with my relationship with Hyojin. Not personally like he directly attacked me or something, but knowing the things that were going on. And I've always struggled, kind of like, but he didn't, all this. So, but in the biggest scheme of things, when you look at the big picture, everybody, all of us have to admit, life is hard, and we're not always going to get it right. And God forbid, and unfortunately, in Hyojin's life, made a lot of mistakes and didn't get everything right. But it doesn't change the fact that he was father's and mother's eldest son. Providentially, just as there is only one heavenly parent, there is only one true parents of heaven, earth, and humankind. Please remember this. Do you understand? Thank you. You are all truly wise and sensible. I need to proudly speak of all of you once again. To reiterate, there can be no confusion or side branches hampering us on the path we are taking. Please understand, there is only one path. The path of true love. That's it. It's the path of true love. God, true parents, true family, and each one of us is the son or the daughter of God. And we are meant to grow grow in and become and recognize that relationship and perfect that relationship. I have patiently waited and endured for a long time. I was born and grew as Heavenly Parents' daughter. This is why, even if no one taught me the divine principle, I knew heaven's providence. This is how I made a firm resolve at a young age. I became the subject. My thought was that I will realize Heavenly Parents' dream during my lifetime. In the future, the divine principle will need many updates. Ooh. I had some members communicate with me when they read this in Mother's speech. They were very concerned. But look at closely what she's saying. What I mean is that theories from the completed Testament age do not suffice. You know, the completed Testament age, when we were living with Satan attacking us all the time, and we're living through indemnity, Mother is saying that, you know, there's going to be things we're going to have to let go. Leave them alone. That's the past. Focus on the present. Focus on the ideals of now. That's why she's saying we have to, you know, update. It doesn't mean, none of the divine principle is never going to change. History's never going to change. But update means we have to live in the moment and let go of some of the things of the past. I spoke to you all that I would build and prepare a foundation that would enable all humanity throughout the world to experience internally and externally the achievements of true parents, agree with true parents, and understand easily their providence. Did I achieve this goal or not? I think she's working toward it. She's trying. Furthermore, how would the world of peace of Heavenly Parent and humanity yearn for look like? After resolving to make a model and expand this model, what happened at the Chunwan complex? You all came to Korea for True Parents' birthday celebration, didn't you, or isn't it? Each year, the Chunwan complex will look different. I am working so hard. Should you or should you not expand heaven's foundation in your respective nations and throughout the world? I can, you know, Sharon and I remember going to Chunpyeong in 1999 or in 2000 when it was just tense and it was cold and miserable, and it was we were sleeping, and then we did all the ceremonies that we were doing, and Ansu. Oh my God, it was such a difficult, miserable situation from an external point of view. but gradually, that place has become the kingdom of heaven. It really is beautiful. And then I remember Mamoru and I, when we were there, I guess it was 2006. Oh my God, we were doing Ansu, but it was just two times a day. And then every other day we were going to the spa. And there was this incredibly beautiful grocery store there where you could buy all these wonderful things to eat. And we had the best Korean food, obviously, at the you know, the canteen and it was just a very different experience. We were sitting in chairs and we were studying the principle. It was so beautiful. It was the kingdom of heaven. And I haven't been there since then, but I know it's gotten even better. Right, Josh? Tyler? It's, you know, a hospital is there. There's a place for people that get old. I guess sometimes people are going to get old. And it's just amazing. So this is what Mother is referring to. And coffee shops and, you know, because that's the kingdom of heaven. And there's even areas that are going to be specifically of a particular culture, like a German area or a Japanese area. So that when you go down those streets, you'll be able to experience the flavor of Germany or the flavor of Japan. God, that is beautiful. Isn't that great? That's the kingdom of heaven. That's what Mother is talking about. And she's saying, why don't you do the same thing in your own country? Expand the ideal of the kingdom of heaven. Make it real. That's the age we're living in now. It's because I saw that potential in America that I suddenly came here. We shall realize the restoration of the nation and the restoration of the world without fail. Isn't that so?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Forgive, love, and unite. That's the theme up until 2020. It was the theme of True Father during Nixon's terrible years. Total forgiveness, absolute love, complete unity. It's available to us. We have no excuse. We have no excuse. So, you know, when I think of Stephen Hawkins, can you see this picture? This is him coming out of his wheelchair into the cosmos. This is all you need to see. If you want to think about where he is in the spiritual world, I can tell you he's in a beautiful place because he had a family that loved him and he loved his family. And the same thing is true with Billy Graham. Because Billy Graham had a family that loved him and he loved his family. And regardless of what course he went in his life, whether he succeeded or failed, because true parents have succeeded, and because true parents have accomplished everything, then we are all forgiven, and we are all loved, and we can all unite with each other and become one true family. We have the divine principle, and we have the blessing, and true Father and true Mother did it. And that's that. So the principle is very simple and clear. It's about true family values. It's about trying your best to love people. Love God and love yourself. Love yourself. And love your spouse. Love your children. Love your friends. And yes, we have to even love people that we think are our enemies, because they're not our enemies. Mother said, there aren't many branches. There's only one branch. That means there are no Democrats, there are no Republicans, there are no black people, there are no white people, there's no Christians, there's no Jews, there's no atheists, there's no Buddhists, there's no disunity. People can be involved in all kinds of different cliques and organizations and groups for all kinds of reasons, but our mind and our heart and our spirit has to go right to the heart of people and relate to people as the son or daughter of God. Because that's what true parents have made us into. So, you know, this Easter resurrection, when I stand up here and I speak these things, I feel them so strongly, but I know that when I walk off the stage and we go back into the daily life, you know, and yeah, we all struggle with so many different things. This is the truth. This is the reality. We are living in an age unparalleled, like no other time in history. True parents have done it. They are totally and completely 120% victorious. And the only thing stopping us, the only thing hindering us, you know, is us. It's whatever happens to be inside of us that is not, you know, pure enough or right enough yet. And that's our responsibility. And God, you know, we pray to God and ask God to help us with that. And He will. And He does. Amen. Please join me in prayer. Heavenly Parent, God, please, God, I know our true Father and true Mother, they lived the most incredible life, and still, even true Mother is still trying so hard to share your love and your truth and your goodness with the rest of us. And we're sorry, Father, that we're ignorant and we're so sometimes just small-minded and small-hearted. Even her own family members, the true children, so they also, Father, don't necessarily see things from your point of view as much as they could or should. Please, Father, help us to really forgive and to recognize that the true love is available to us, and we can absolutely love, and we can unite, and we can really find joy and happiness Even if the situation looks to be difficult, it is only temporarily difficult. It will not remain that way. Heavenly Father, please bless, really bless each and every family that's here, and the families that are connected to our true parents because of the blessing. Please bless them, whether they come to Sunday service or not. Please, Father, find your way into their minds and into their hearts, and help us to share and spread this love to others, Father, in whatever way we can. Thank you for your patience with us and for all of fallen mankind, and for taking so much care. Even the rest of the world is still in the dark. They don't realize that their true parents are here, the true parents have come, and that this true love is available. Father, we're sorry that we haven't been more serious. Anyway, Father, thank you again and again for your love and support, and we pray that your will can be done in America and throughout the world. And we report this as our names, blessed Central Families. Amen. Anju.